In other words, welcome everybody. Welcome our brand new members and our experienced members, and a hearty welcome to all of our guests. This is our second virtual only online evaluation workshop. We dabbled with this last year, and this year we're in it again. I hope it's fun. I know it will be fun. As a housekeeping measure, I want to remind you that unless you are speaking, have a speaking role at that moment, please remember to mute your microphones because this meeting will be recorded for all of us to learn from it. To start off our meeting, this is our evaluation workshop, but I wanted to do just a little bit of roles explanation. I would like our Zoom master, Linda Wilson, to give a very brief explanation of her role this evening.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to be your Zoom master. It sounds very prestigious, Zoom master. Like I've been doing this forever, and I'm just learning how to be the Zoom master. But the Zoom master just monitors all the attendees, and if I hear, when people come in, and if I hear noise, I'm able to mute them so it won't disturb the meeting or disturb the speakers. And also it's recording, which is so awesome. And we can play back and learn even more. And we have breakout rooms. We won't use the breakout rooms, but Zoom has a lot of tools that we can use to help us in our meetings and help our meetings be fun and entertaining. Thank you, Madam Toastmaster Michelle.
Thank you, Madam Zoom Master Linda. And next is our esteemed timer, Allison Heisler. Allison, would you give a brief explanation?
I will be timing who's ever speaking, just on the clock on my cell phone. Okay?
Will you be giving the red, yellow, green?
Yes, I have it right here.
Perfect.
Okay.
Okay, and on to evaluator. I'm going to pick on one of our evaluators. Gabriel, would you mind me to pick on you and just give a brief explanation of your evaluator role?
The evaluator is to give feedback on a person's speech, things they can work on, but also things that they've done well. I personally kind of like to dig back into the person's history of giving speeches, if I've heard a speech from them before, to see if there's like a pattern going on with their habits. So that's my personal take on it. Madam Toastmaster.
Thank you, Evaluator Gabriel. Our two evaluators for this evening will be Gabriel Duchesne and Linda Maniscalco. At this point, I would like to introduce our evaluation workshop host. Our workshop host is a distinguished Toastmaster, ×3, working on her 4th. She is currently reigning district champion in the evaluation contest. We brought in the big guns to teach us tonight. She gives an evaluation workshop almost every year. Please welcome Kim Myers.
Thank you, everybody. For many of you who know me, you know that I hate doing PowerPoints, but there's always an exception to the rule. So this is our evaluation workshop. I am Kim Myers. I've been a member of Bluejacket. I'm a current member of Bluejacket. I'm also a member of Promo Toastmasters and Masters Toastmasters. So what we're going to do today is we're going to talk about what is a good evaluation, kind of why we do evaluations in the first place. We're going to go and watch at least one speech. We'll have an evaluator evaluate the speech. And then we're going to come back and kind of talk about that evaluation. So Linda and Gabe, word of warning, you are going to get feedback as an evaluator as well. And I hope you're fine with that. Won't be hard, won't be disappointing, won't be sad. And then we'll go back and we'll just go over, do a quick review at the end of the evening. So first things first, every evaluator, when given the opportunity, and it's not always possible, should speak with the speaker before the speech is given. And the purpose of meeting with that speaker is, number one, to not only get a really good feeling of what the Toastmasters objectives are for the speech, but also so you understand what that speaker is looking for from an evaluation. For instance, I'm a speaker who's been speaking for a long time, and my objectives, personal objectives, may be a little bit different than somebody that's brand new. And in addition, to go along with that, then the evaluator has to lay the expectations out for the audience members as well. So you do need to understand that speech purpose. I'm going to be honest, in the old legacy program, the traditional program with Toastmasters International, often we would have, big we, meaning members of our clubs would have a hip pocket speech. And sometimes it didn't necessarily fit the speech objectives that were laid out in the manual or the pathways, and that still happens today. So it's really important that you understand the purpose of the speech, especially when we get in pathways, when we're doing some of these speeches and we hear them repetitively. So virtually everything in a second level path is something that you've heard from somebody else. So when you're talking about your communication styles, when you're talking about your leadership styles, it's important for that evaluator to really understand the purpose of that speech, because we as speakers have an obligation to speak within those objectives. And sometimes it's nice to call that person out during the evaluation, which sounds a little bit sad. But always ask what I'm looking for. Sometimes I'm looking for, if I'm standing up for a speech, I'm looking in the virtual world where I'm centered. If I've chosen to use a virtual background, it kind of forces my gestures and my movement to be a little contained, which is why most of the time when I speak virtually, I turn off the background because it's so limiting. Otherwise, I get that blurry thing going on. I may also say, I need to make sure that my gestures match what I'm trying to say. So if I'm talking about something being horizontal, my gestures need to be this way and not this way. And sometimes we have a tendency where our movement doesn't really match what we're saying. So I often ask for that because I am a perfect example of someone who doesn't always match what I'm trying to say. And the evaluator needs to be prepared. And Shed, when we thought he was going to do an evaluation, asked for an evaluation form. Every speech in Toastmasters should be a manual speech, including this workshop. None of them are excluded. And we always need to be using that evaluation form and sharing it with the speaker. Whenever I do an evaluation of somebody, even virtually, I take a picture or scan in the evaluation form and send it to the speaker, because often I am not necessarily giving my evaluation based upon what I wrote on my evaluation form, which kind of brings up the subject. There's the written evaluation, which is what goes on the form. And then there is the evaluation that you're sharing with the audience, because every evaluation is for the speaker themselves, But if it was just for the speaker, you would be giving that evaluation one-on-one. So it becomes a learning opportunity for the audience as well to learn what they could be doing to improve, where they have areas for improvement, and sometimes even matching back. Some clubs do round robin evaluations, so everyone gets to give a little bit of feedback to that speaker because that's our growth moment, right? And Gabe said earlier that he likes to make sure it provides a recommendation, and he may go back if he has seen the speaker speak before, so he can give some evaluation and watch that growth of the speaker. That's not always possible, but it is certainly something that should be evaluated if you have that particular piece kind of sitting out there. So we're going to talk about feedback versus recommendations. So every speech needs to be feedback. It's not constructive criticism. It's not always, I hesitate to use the word criticism, constructive advice. It's really feedback. And it's what you as a listener and evaluator saw. You know, what were those gestures? What did you see the speaker do? What you heard from the speaker, which is those grammatically correct, beautiful sentences telling a story, or what you felt. And you can combine all three. For me, a great speech hits my heart somewhere. And those are the speeches I remember. I don't remember that the speaker had grammatical pauses. I remember the story and how they made me feel. And that's when that speaker is connecting to the audience. So if you don't feel that emotion or advice or whatever the purpose of the speech, that's certainly something you should be giving feedback on. And always, always try to use examples from the speech. So the example I can give is, I really loved it when you did X, Y, or Z. It really reinforced the message that you were trying to present. And always, if you can, draw out what the message that you heard was. Our speaker for the International Speech Contest, who went as far as the semifinals this year, what he did when he was asking for feedback from people who watched the speech is, what message did you get from my speech? Because what he was trying to do is clarify and hone down to what that message really was. Oftentimes, I will use a speech at Toastmasters to practice something that I'm giving as part of a bigger keynote speech. And I'm really testing to see if the stories match the message that I'm trying to give. And one time in one of my advanced clubs, I had someone who said, I absolutely hated that story. I hated it. It didn't make me feel comfortable at all. And this is why, and I would recommend that you use something like this, and gave another example to kind of reinforce the message that I was trying to give. And that's what your speakers are really looking for. They're looking for something that will really help us improve, which is where we get to the recommendations. Number one, they should be used very sparingly. You need to give no more than one, well, you have to give at least one recommendation, but never more than two, unless your speaker has specifically said, hey, Gabe, when you're evaluating my speech, can you please focus on X, Y, and Z? And I'm fine with that. Then that forces the evaluator to level up front for the guests in the room, saying, I'm evaluating a very experienced speaker, and they ask for this kind of feedback. So this is not a normal Toastmasters recommendation. It's going to be a little heavy on the recommendations, and this is why. And that's why it's so important that you talk to the speaker so that you understand what they're looking for. Use specific examples when you're giving a recommendation. And in my mind, this goes back to, don't say, and I hear this sometimes, kind of a standard recommendation that somebody gives every single speech, that somebody doesn't use some kind of visual aid. Would have been nice if you'd given me a handout, or it would have been nice. So if you're going to do that, you need to explain why a handout would have helped reinforce the message, or why a visual aid of some kind would reinforce that message. Does that make sense? So sometimes, we'll have, I'm going to use an example where someone will begin a speech with the quote. And the more you get into the speech, the less it refers to that quote. So it was kind of like a quote that may have just been given just to give you the speech starting. In that situation, you could say, I would have been a little bit more engaged if you had given me a story that was specific to what you were going to tell me later in the speech. Maybe something like X, Y, or Z that would help me reinforce that message. And you need to provide that focus for improvement, because the whole purpose of getting the evaluation is so that the speaker can grow and the members of our Toastmasters clubs can grow. Now, I'm going to say that an evaluation within a club meeting is very different than evaluation at an evaluation contest. And typically you'll see workshops like these given as we go into the evaluation contest season. And what makes those different is, in a contest, I, number one, have not been able to talk to my speaker ahead of time. I have no idea what the purpose of their speech is, and I do not have an introduction. Instead, what I have is Kim Myers, lessons from life, Kim Myers, and the speaker starts speaking and giving their 5 to 7 minute speech, which is harder for the evaluator to really kind of hone in on what those items were. So I've really focused this particular workshop on what should happen in a club meeting. Does that make sense? And y'all can say yes or no. You can open your microphones and give me some feedback, because that's the whole purpose. So when we talk about organization of an evaluation, it's just like every other speech in the world. It has an opening, a body, and a conclusion. And this is the one time when I'm going to refer back to the evaluation contest. I will tell you, you will not win an evaluation contest if you do not have a wrap up and conclusion to your evaluation, because it leaves the audience in the lurch. So for the opening, I would focus on the best aspect of the speech. And honestly, for me, most of the time, it's that opening statement. It's what made me really want to listen to that speech in the first place. It may be the story. For some speakers, it may be the beautiful words that they use in the sentence structure. That may be what I'm going to focus on, but always focus on that really good aspect of the speech. Now, I'm a big believer in what most people would call the sandwich style of evaluation, which is a compliment, a recommendation, another compliment in the speech. Now, you can do that any number of ways. You hear all sorts of different ways of doing speeches or evaluations, what I heard, what I felt, what I saw, and focus on those. Did you share the message? Did your body movement meet the speech? Did you have that great meeting of your speech objectives? But each one of those should have an area of improvement when you do a speech like that. And I find them to be very hard to focus on really what an evaluator wants me to get out of my evaluation. So I prefer the sandwich style. If you're using something else, you need to explain it because most people will be in a lurch. I went to a club in Denver that they use all sorts of different styles, but in essence, they're really all the sandwich method. They're just called something different. So then you can go back to the positive feedback, you know, and you can load this up. I really liked your sentence structure. I really liked it when you made that segue or transition from your opening into the body of the speech. I really liked a story that really hit me with this emotion. And then you have those areas for improvement. And like I said, keep it to one, no more than two. Especially for your beginner speakers, because it's already overwhelming for them. And if you load too much on them, there's no one thing they can really focus on. So it's the area for improvement and a very specific recommendation on what to do. So in the world we're in right now, it may be as simple as, I wish you had centered your body in the middle of the screen, which then allows you to do some movement if it's necessary to kind of focus. Or your gestures were so big that I didn't see your hand movement when it was over your head. Or you spent all your time doing this. And this is what I wish you had done to improve upon that, to share the message and bring it back into the speech itself. Then you have your wrapping up with a positive aspect of the speech. And, you know, that can go back to, you know, I didn't know that you were such a great storyteller, Linda. And what I always look forward to in every speech is the stories that you provide. And then a quick conclusion of what you said. You know, you had a great speech. I loved your opening story. I do wish you had had some more movement within your speech. And then thank you very much. Now, I'm going to say I get really tired of hearing, I can't wait for your next speech, because, you know, that just seems very flippant. I think you need to give something that's specific to each speaker. And Gabe, I think you said it really well. I've seen the growth in your speech from your last speech, and I cannot wait to see your next speech to see what improvements you make for next time. So be very specific, be very heartfelt. And you know, there's really no one way of giving a speech evaluation because every speech is different. And so consequently, really what's in common is the open body and conclusion, some feedback and a recommendation, and then ending again with positive feedback. We have had clubs where the evaluations have been so negative that speakers leave, especially new speakers. So that's one of the other reasons that you really need to meet with the speaker in advance to understand where they're at and where you're at. But like I said, that doesn't always happen. Shed was an example. I may have asked Shed to evaluate a speaker that he had not had an opportunity to talk to, but I'm sure Shed is a great evaluator and he would have lived up to the task because he would have followed some of these kind of implicit ways of doing an evaluation. So does anybody have any questions regarding the structure of the speech or feedback versus recommendations?
Kim, I would just like, this is Shed, I would just like to throw in a couple of comments. I probably have to leave here shortly. But one thing that we're always looking for also is the delivery, and then in the language, making sure that you're clear, the clear message that you're giving to the speaker. You don't want to be sounding all garbled and things like that. So you want to make sure your language is clear, the delivery, then of course the content of what you're putting out.
Right, and I probably should have talked to that because an evaluation is a speech,
right,
in and of itself. delivery has to be clear, has to have a clear message, and you don't want to ever whitewash an evaluation. I'll be honest, I'm one of those people who has left the club because I didn't feel I was getting the feedback for my speeches that I felt was needed for my personal growth. And you
I have
know,
a question.
go ahead.
So I find when I'm doing an evaluation that I would like to offer a critique to help grow, because that's kind of what I like. But I have a difficult time figuring out how to say that, how to give the, not criticism, but like people will take it that way. Because I'm trying to figure out a polite way to put, you need to stay more on topic or focus in on this, and to really help them grow. A lot of times there's so much complimentary stuff that I don't hear enough of, you really need to work on this in your compliment sandwich.
That is that was that Terrell. That is a very true statement. And it's one of the aspects of the evaluation process that I think we all find rather difficult. And that's why it's important that you write those down and you put them on the written portion of the evaluation. And especially on the part with the new evaluations, and they're not new anymore, where we talk kind of about the stretch goals or what you can do to really improve to make your speech better. And those are what I like to talk about in my recommendation area. And then, I will always put down on a speech evaluation my kind of notes. Sometimes I think I threw it away. Sometimes I have the evaluation form itself, page 1, page 2, and then I have a page where I just have my notes that I've used to give the evaluation on, and I will also send those to the speaker. Now, they may not make any sense to the speaker, and then I'll write, if you have any questions, why don't we talk about it? Because that's for them and it's not something I'm sharing with everybody else.
Okay, because sometimes I think, where are they going with this speech? Because they're giving a lot of examples, and I'm like, they're not following points, like they're not following a logical thing for me. And I'm like, okay, how do I place that or talk about that? Because I found in my time when people want to critique, if I really truly say what I think, it hurts their feelings because I'm blunt.
Exactly.
And so
Exactly.
I don't end up saying 90% of what I think because I've already gotten feedback through my lifetime that hurts. And so I do 10% because at least it's one nugget. But I would prefer, if I'm speaking, people to really, I want help. So I want to know, and that I'll talk directly to my evaluator. I'll let them know that. But other people, I think that's a good idea. I've never talked to the speaker.
Yeah, I'll always try to talk to the speaker, and that's why I'm one of the people like you, Terrell. I like more feedback rather than less feedback because it's how I grow. But that would mean that when I open my evaluation, I would say, thank you, Terrell, for that great speech. For the audience members, Terrell and I have previously spoken about the speech. And so we're going to be a little heavy on the recommendations, although I will point out what Terrell did really, really well, but she would like us to focus on this particular aspect, and you can certainly do that. But I think you have to level set for the audience so they're not thinking that every single evaluation is like this. And then what you'll find out is clubs tend to follow some of that leads. So when you look at an advanced club, you'll see far more of that very, very focused feedback that you don't get from every club. And that's perfectly fine. Absolutely perfectly fine. So, you're going to have to do what's best for you and what's best for the speaker. And you're right, you just have to be diligent. I would put it back on the back side, because the back side of the evaluation forms have you rating things from a 1 through a 5. That's your opportunity to make some of those more focused concepts. I have a friend who will say, pretty bluntly, I loved your examples, but I didn't really understand the message or the focus of your speech. And, if you wanted to focus your whole entire evaluation on one aspect of the speech, you can certainly do that. I think most of the audience members here know that's how I tend to do an evaluation, is focus on one aspect of the speech and kind of center on it. Anyone else?
Yeah, Kim, this is Linda Maniscalco. I had a question on all of the new forms and pathways. They ask you to give the speaker a challenge as opposed to, or in addition to, an opportunity to improve. So can you kind of talk about those two items and how that they differ and what you can do?
Sure. This is my interpretation of how that should work. One of them is that specific recommendation, where your movement may not have matched your message, and it's one aspect. What I think we hear most of the time is, now that we're in the virtual world, you have the opportunity to be able to do some things that you couldn't do before. And this is what I'd like to see. Again, we get into some of the very standard comments, which is, I really wish you stood up for your speech. Well, let's be honest, when I stand up for the speech, while you're seeing my whole body, it really means that my room has to be suitable for whatever I'm being recommended for. So you have to be cautious, but it's really that stretch goal, Linda, on what could really make this speech better. And that could be exactly what Terrell said. I really need you to focus, or I really feel if you focus on the message first and built things around the message, it might help your speech be more clear. And you don't need to say that in the oral evaluation, but on the written evaluation. So some clubs do the stretch goal as part of the speech evaluation. It depends on a little bit on the culture of the club. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
For me, sometimes what I get a lot of this in the virtual world is, well, I wish you used a virtual background. Well, the second I go to a virtual background, I'm going to show you what it does. I'm going to stop sharing. Maybe I'll stop sharing. And I'm going to change my background. And I think Linda has a virtual background behind her right now. But what happens to me when I use a virtual background? I'll be honest, I've been so used to not being in Zoom, and I've been in WebEx lately that I'm not sure. There we go. I lose my background. I lose my hands. And so, just because you can doesn't always mean you should. Does that make sense? Does that make sense?
Kim, do you use any kind of like green screen or green sheet or green something back there?
Sometimes I do. If I'm going to present where I know there's an expectation to have a virtual background, I may put up a green screen. I don't like to leave it up all the time, because then when I'm having work meetings, because we're working from home, I have to take it down, and or it looks like I'm living in my closet, which would not be a good thing.
Right.
Just so you know, but that's those are the problems that we all face. I think, yeah, because I can see Linda blurring a little bit. So like I said, you just have to be cautious, and these are the kind of things that you can point out in a speech. but you have to be cautious. The one critique I get a lot is I don't see you looking directly at the camera. Well, I'm going to be honest, I'm vision impaired. In order for me to look at the camera, for the camera to see me properly and me to be able to see the screen, when I'm looking directly at my screen, it looks like I'm looking kitty corner and I'm not looking on focus. So, you have to be cautious, which is why you should be talking to your speaker. So any additional questions related to, and I'll go back to the PowerPoint, which there's not a lot left because I keep it simple. No?
I have a question, it's Terrell again. So
Go ahead,
you
Terrell.
noted that many different clubs have different types of sandwiches. So I'd be interested to know if there's like a quick sheet on the different types of sandwich, compliment, but I'm not actually familiar with all the different types that could be out there that I might be able to utilize and switch up. And I like having those tools and examples.
Yes, and all I'd ask, and what I saw from that club that did that was they did say, I'm going to use this kind of evaluation, and then they explained it a little bit, and they were given a little bit of time before the actual evaluation to kind of overview what type of evaluation they were going to be using. And that was a club that focused on evaluation, and I wish I could remember the name of it. It was a really early morning club in Denver. That's all I remember, downtown. And you could share that, ahead of time too, as a handout, or in chat to eliminate that time issue.
Hey,
And,
Kim, this is Shed. Before you
Shed.
Go off and start doing your speeches, I just want to say, I always think about, what we put out in the public is still just like you think about at the workforce. You don't want to put things out in public that's going to damage someone or demean someone. So even though you're keeping it positive and you're identifying stuff in a positive manner for them to work on, you can always have that sidebar after the meeting and let them know what they can continue to work on. But as far as putting stuff out in a club manner,
that is exactly true. And so that's a really, it's like, Shed, you set me up. This was the next slide, following Toastmasters core values. So when you're giving those evaluations, you always have to remember you're giving the evaluation with integrity, which to me means being honest and, being truthful with respect. So respect for the speaker and the audience, which gets back to you don't want to air, negative things that could be hurtful in the evaluation. You don't want to do it in a written evaluation either. Service. So, let's be honest, you're doing a service, it's a teaching moment when you're giving an evaluation. So if you always think of your evaluation as the one time in Toastmasters we get that opportunity to be teachers, this is that one time. And lastly, excellence. You always want to give the best evaluation possible because it reflects well on you, your club, Toastmasters. It's all about following those core values. And when we see members who leave because they felt like they either got a really horrible, hurtful evaluation, it's because the evaluator has forgotten the core values of Toastmasters. So always think of them as your guardrails, because they are important to everything we do. So that's the way I look at evaluations. It's my favorite part of Toastmasters because it's that growth moment of Toastmasters. There's a growth moment when a speaker gets up to give a speech. And if that speech is done really well, it's a teaching moment for everyone in the room. And that evaluation is also another teaching moment. And, you know, we don't want the speakers to ever get a whitewashed evaluation, because, you know, they walk away from that evaluation thinking that you weren't listening. So when you do give recommendations and you are focusing on a specific part of the speech, make sure you have it right. So if the character's name was Cameron and you use Bobby, the speaker's going to know you probably weren't really listening to them. So always give those little glimmers of hope. And sometimes I may not catch a name because I'm so involved in the story. So consequently, I know that about myself and I don't use the name. I'll say, I loved the character at the beginning of the speech. So that is actually the work, the actual presentation portion of the speech. So now let's go ahead and get on with it. So how many of you are kind of nervous now? Are speakers a little bit nervous? Oh, Catherine, you're going to be just fine. I will admit that sometimes I've done this workshop where I use a single speaker who's working on like an international speech contest speech or a humorous speech for the contest cycle. And we ask them to be evaluated and then take in the recommendation from the evaluator and give the speech a second time. Obviously, I'm not doing that this evening because it's hard for everybody, but it's a good learning moment. And, you know, I want to tell you as Toastmasters, as a speaker, your evaluations that you get need to be meaningful for you. Because otherwise, you're not really learning from it. You're just getting up and giving a speech and getting the claps and sitting down. And Toastmasters is that experiential learning example that we have. So that's why the evaluations are probably the most important aspect of the meeting. So let's see, I'm gonna go through really quickly. Oh, Shed says he's leaving. Duh, I saw him leave. I'm really sad to see him go. Hi, Yolanda, I didn't see you earlier. So with that, how would you like me to go ahead and introduce our first speaker, provided I can find the evaluation I had in front of me a second ago? Yes.
This is Linda. I signed up, I think, to be the first evaluator, and I think I was evaluating Courtney on the agenda. So could you tell us who's speaking, what we need to evaluate, and who's evaluating?
That is a really good point. And you probably weren't here when we talked about that, because we did talk about it earlier. Courtney has stepped out. Wilson's going to be our first speaker. And Linda, just so you know, his speech is the Inspire Your Audience speech from Leadership Development. And I believe it is an elective. Is that correct, Wilson?
That's correct.
Great. And Linda, you're evaluating Wilson. And Catherine is our second speaker, and she's being evaluated by Gabe.
Sorry,
All right.
I came at the beginning of the meeting at 7, so I don't know when you said that, but I'm sorry.
Yeah, it was probably before that. So we dug right into it. So I will remind the evaluators that we will be doing a round robin evaluation of the evaluators for about 3 minutes. If Allison can time us after that for like a 3-minute evaluation. And I do want to remind everybody that part of the general evaluator role is to do a very quick evaluation, not of the speaker, but of the evaluator. And some clubs do a great job of that, just for further edification. With that, I would like to introduce our first speaker this evening, Wilson. Wilson, I can't pronounce your last name and I apologize. I didn't think I had to say it all. But Wilson, my friend Wilson, who I've evaluated several times, he is doing a speech out of the leadership development path. It's Project Inspire Your Audience, which is one of the electives. For Allison, it is 5 to 7 minutes. The speech title, To Stand Out, You Must Think Differently. You can't be part of the crowd and still stand out, can you? To stand out, you must think as a leader, talk as a leader, and act as a leader. What does it take to do that? This is what we will explore, navigate, and perch our attention, focus and thoughts on with a view to reorienting our passion, interest, and zeal correctly. To stand out, you must think differently. Please welcome Wilson.
Toastmaster, we are all seated here tonight as Toastmasters, as public speakers, and essentially, and most importantly, as leaders. All of us want to stand out. But how many of us actually have the vision and the courage to do that? To stand out, we must first of all refine our thinking, change it to the way we want. First and foremost, we must know what we are doing and where we are going. To start off, we must divine our victories, successes, and successes in advance. It is easier to stand out when you know your intent, motive, and purpose of doing that. Otherwise, you'll be roaming aimlessly from place to place without understanding what you are doing and achieving very little because you don't know what you want to achieve. To do that, ask yourself the following questions as often as possible, preferably every day. Why do I want to stand out? How do I want to stand out? In other words, what should I do every day and every time to stand out? And how should I do it? When do I want to stand out? Because it's every time and always. Where do I want to stand out? Because you must be specific when, where, how, why, and what. That's just the beginning. Divine also, remember in the real world, we are not alone. Like here, we are a group. In society, we have the public, we have our families, we have our friends, we have people online, offline, everywhere. We live in a complex society. So divine your actors and stakeholders and be clear about that. This is what we can call the who issue. Who is my immediate audience? Who is my larger audience or ultimate audience? And specifically, who is my target audience? You want to shine out, but who is your target audience? Remember, a man is a lion in his own cause. Or let us reframe it also. A woman is a lioness in her own cause. Divine your enemies, your causes, and your wars. That will give you a lion or lioness mentality. Remember always that your true enemies are never human beings. People make a mistake to assume that these people like I, you, or others who are our enemies. That's wrong. So ask yourself, what's my true enemy? Is it illiteracy, for example? Is it ignorance? Is it hunger? Is it the disease? Is it attitude, poor attitudes? Is it child abuse? Is it domestic violence? Is it dishonesty? Is it injustice? And what injustice is that? From there, define your cause. You want to promote human rights, education, public speaking, leadership, or even science, technology. What do you want it to do? Define also your scope, jurisdiction, and jurisdiction. Are you going to act locally or nationally, regionally or internationally, within an organization or outside, within and outside your organization? Are you going to act between people interpersonally or personally? The issues you are dealing with, are they going to be interpersonal or intrapersonal? Are they your own issues or issues that concern everybody? That's important, remember. Remember also that the pen is mightier than the sword. You know that. The pen is mightier than the sword, because we know that. Define your strategy and artillery. As a Toastmaster, your artillery consists of the language, all languages you use, or the ones you know, including verbal and non-verbal. And of course, languages like English, Swahili, Spanish, if you know any of that. And also you have words of any language at your disposal. And you have to decide how you want to employ the languages you use and the words you use as well. To make that effective, remember, you must adopt an intelligent lion or lioness mentality. A lion is considered brave, but we know it's not intelligent. So combine human intelligence with the bravery or courage of a lion, and then act courageously, confidently, and consistently. In conclusion, fellow Toastmasters and guests, do you want to stand out and shine? I'm sure you do. And if you actually do, then for how long are you going to be part of the crowd? We urge you to master courage, stand up, think differently, and stand out. The time is now, not tomorrow. Yes, stand up and stand out. The ball is now in your court. Over to you, Toastmaster.
Thank you very much, Wilson. Let me give you just a few seconds to write some notes down for yourself. And of course, if you do have any comments specifically for the speaker, you can send them to him in a private message or email him later. All right. Our next speaker is Catherine Capps. She is working from the Pathway and Presentation Mastery. Her project is building a social media presence. For our timer, the speech is 5 to 7 minutes. The title of Catherine's speech is The Battle Against the Big Bad Beast, Part 2. Tonight, Catherine is presenting her Level 4 project entitled How to Build a Social Media Presence. Although this project has really helped her start to make use of social media, there's an ongoing journey that she is taking step by step. Please help me welcome Catherine with her speech entitled The Battle Against the Big Bad Beast, Part 2. Catherine.
Thank you. Thank you, Kim. Sorry, just getting myself set up. All right. Well, welcome to part 2 of my ongoing Building a Social Media Presence project. And I'm calling it ongoing because the first part of this speech, the first time I gave a speech for this project, I should say, I gave it just over a year ago in November of 2020. And as a reminder, for those of you who did hear me speak on this subject a year ago, and just for those of you who didn't, some context so you know what I'm dealing with and talking about. I was at a point a year ago where I realized that social media had been what I now call a giant of intimidation in my life. And it had got to the point where I knew I needed to do something about it. And I even got to the point where I wanted to make it my servant, right? So I could use it as a tool. Well, at this time, this Toastmasters project came across my path, and it ended up being or becoming a launching pad, so to speak, for me into the land of the dreaded social media. So fast forward a year and here we are. And I now have a new job in a new school where I'm actually doing just this. I represent myself, but mostly my new school on social media. It's a marketing job. And this means that my learning in this area obviously has had to accelerate. And I've put myself through various courses and classes in order to get to this point, but I've mostly done it professionally. So now what I'm doing is actually applying or starting to apply what I've been learning about social media to my personal life, to grapple with the big bad beast. So I have limited myself up to this point to just 3 platforms: LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram. So I'm going to show you my profile page for each one of these 3 platforms. Just as a disclaimer, honestly, in the area of my personal life, I'm really just getting started with this. And I've actually posted links for you in the chat, just in case any of you would like to follow me on my social media, you could do that. All right, so right now I am going to need to share screen. So I am going to see if I can do that right now, and I will be bringing up my LinkedIn personal profile. Here we go. Okay. Are you all able to see this okay? Yeah, okay. Very good. So LinkedIn, this I use for professional networking. Here you see my banner, of course, my banner image, which I chose kind of carefully, and my headline under my name. I've changed it from teacher and tutor. A year ago, that read teacher and tutor here. Now it's marketing and communication. But bear in mind for this, I honestly can't stress enough how scary it was for me, and even still is to me, to be honest, to put myself out there in front of the world. So as I say, taking little steps one at a time. Next for Facebook. So let me go ahead and bring up my Facebook profile right here. So this I use for connection with family and friends. So LinkedIn is my professional networking. This is for connection, relationships. And that's on 2 levels, really. So the first one is my young adult children. It's not unusual for me to actually see things about their lives, to learn things about what they're doing from their Facebook page that they haven't even shared with their mother. So, you know, but that doesn't always happen. And then, of course, I like to connect with other people around the country and around the world. And you know what I'm finding? That Facebook Messenger gets me in direct contact with certain people, like my nieces in England, for example. They're forever on Messenger. And that's really fun to have that quick and immediate connection with them. And then moving on to the third platform, this is my Instagram page. So this I use for creative content. I've decided to use it to chart my journey into the land of photography, if you like. So I am actually experimenting with photography. For my job, I just really have to hone my photography skills. So I am being very intentional about that right now. So what do you think of some of these pictures? Again, this is new. This totally is just a new experimentation. Here's a cow. Literally, I took a photo of this cow because I like cows. And when I was looking at this cow, I thought, I really enjoy looking at cows. And then I thought to myself, I think this cow is enjoying looking at me. And so, I don't know, I was just having fun. Here, this middle one, this is clouds. And I just love looking down on clouds from an airplane window. I'm going to be posting photographs that are meaningful to me. Anyway, I have learned that the social media thing, it really and truly does take significant patience and perseverance for me. And it really also takes effort just to be consistent, which is so important on social media. So it is a learning curve, and it's causing me to grow like crazy. It's a step-by-step journey, and I suspect that there could be a third installment in this saga, who knows, in a few months' time. So yes, stay tuned. And yes, the big bad beast of social media is going to be my servant. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Catherine. And we'll go ahead and give a few moments for everyone to write their comments or share them directly with our speaker. All right. Allison, can we have a timers report, please?
Sure. Wilson spoke for 7 minutes and 40 seconds, and Catherine spoke for 7 minutes and 2 seconds.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Let me find my agenda here. Let's see. Our first evaluator of the evening is going to be Linda Menefelco evaluating Wilson's speech. Linda, are you ready?
Yes, I am. Thank you, Kim. Wilson, I enjoyed your tone and tenor of your speech, and I think it was very important in your message and exactly what you were trying to get across to us in your speech tonight. What a great example of courage and, tone you gave us when you were explaining exactly your courage and your entire speech and what you had to do to stand out and be a great speaker. You started with a strong description in your introduction. Introductions sometimes are pretty much passed over, and I thought yours was excellent. It really, really set the tone for the speech. And many people don't even realize that that is already giving you an advantage before you even open your mouth. So kudos to that. That was a great start. You used both your strong voice, your inflection, and your bold hand gestures throughout the speech, describing exactly how you would pick your target audience and exactly why you should become and set your mindset as a lion or a lioness and pick your issues and make yourself passionate about those issues so they can convey exactly what you mean. Your speech was very forceful throughout. I think you were really at 100% through the whole speech. I would suggest an opportunity for improvement if you use a speech again to perhaps mix it a little and maybe slow down the voice, slow down the tempo, and go ahead and maybe a few pauses. Then when you finish in the end and come back very strong and show your lion courage, you can really make an impact, and that would double your impact in your speech. I liked your courage. It inspired me, which I think was the message for your speech. I think it's important that we all stand out or try to and really stand up. I really think that your word choice actually displayed that the pen is mightier than the sword. Congratulations.
Thank you very much, Linda. So and I'm going to ask you all to take your mics off because we're going to use a little bit of time here, maybe 5 minutes, to give some thoughts about Linda's evaluation of Wilson's speech. Again, what did you think, feel, or hear from that evaluation?
I heard a lot of positive feedback for Wilson, but I also heard her provide him some area of opportunities as well. And that's important because you are speaking and you want to improve on your speaking. So it was some key points, some opportunities, but it wasn't opportunities that tore him down. It was certainly things that could improve on his speaking. Great job, Linda.
Anyone else?
Great job, Linda. I give you kudos. I could tell you were listening and you took some good notes.
I felt you really delved into his speech and gave solid examples, and you provided a few suggestions, which I felt backed up the examples.
Anyone else?
Kim, can you ask Wilson what he thought?
I will. Wilson, what did you think of that evaluation? We don't get that opportunity very often, do we?
No.
What did you think, Wilson?
It was first of all, as a speaker, I find it encouraging, relevant.
Good.
I'm going to make 3 comments. Number 1, I loved how Linda tied back to the courage aspect of Wilson's speech throughout the whole entire evaluation. It showed those listening skills. I also like that she had a really great teaching moment when she talked about Wilson's introductions. Wilson, you always do really great introductions. And Linda explained why those introductions are so important. Thank you very much, Linda. That was a learning lesson for everyone here. And I really liked your recommendation. I felt the same way, which was a little bit interesting because usually Wilson tends to be a little bit slower in his speaking, and you could tell he was really passionate about this speech and talked a little bit faster than we normally hear from him. So Linda, I thought it was a brilliant evaluation. Thank you so much. And I liked the conclusion, and this is the kind of evaluation that could win the contest at the district level because it was so thorough. So yeah, that's my encouragement to you, Linda.
Thank you.
So, you're not in leadership this year, are you?
I'm encouraged.
Good, I think you should. Now, Gabe, this is a new voice. I don't think I've heard Gabe's voice for evaluations, so I'm really curious and excited. Gabe, I'd like to welcome you as the evaluator for Catherine's speech. Please welcome Gabriel.
Thank you. I just want to throw in a disclaimer myself that I did not see your first speech last year, Catherine. So I'm coming from a perspective of someone who's just kind of jumping into your process. And that kind of leads me into how I felt about this overall, is that I really felt like we were or at least I'm speaking for myself. I felt like I was a part of your journey through accepting social media. And I do empathize with that, and I'm sure a lot of people do as well. The feeling comfortable with even trying to embrace social media in general. So I kind of like how you periodically, I mean, throughout most of the speech, you showed us the LinkedIn, the Facebook, the Instagram. And I actually felt more comfortable with the idea of being on social media because I'm not. So seeing you kind of compartmentalize your life for family, for Facebook, and expressing yourself through photography on Instagram and your business ventures on LinkedIn and whatnot. I think that it kind of shows that social media doesn't have to be this big stress, which is what you opened up with. Social media being this giant form of intimidation, which I thought was really good, a really good way to kind of open the speech and set the context for the fear that a lot of people probably feel just dealing with social media in general. Now, I don't know if this is actually advice, but you mentioned in the past in some of your other speeches that you were a teacher, or you've been involved with the school district for a long time. I noticed when you open your speech, or the first maybe 30 seconds, you were talking very slowly, and it kind of came off as a bit teacherish. And if that's kind of intended to kind of get us into that groove of this interactive journey through social media, the kind of slow talking to kind of ease us into it, then I actually consider that a good thing personally. If you did not intend for that,
I didn't.
Then it's just a heads up. So overall, I like that you ended off on kind of a cliffhanger, and I do think I am curious. I know I'm probably not supposed to say this, but I am curious to see how this concludes in regards to how you're currently interacting with social media, because for people like me, your conclusion will kind of determine how I perceive social media in the future. So overall, great speech, and Madam Toastmaster.
Thank you very much. Nicely done. So do we have any comments for Gabe? And thank you for being so brave to do this today, Gabe, of all days. Anyone?
Well, I do. If I can go
Please
first.
do.
Is that okay? I just really like the way Gabe connects on the heart level with me. Gabe's evaluated me before, and I just really appreciate that. I feel as if he's hearing my heart as well as just ideas. And so, like you mentioned, that you felt what I was saying about social media and it being a giant of intimidation, and that curiosity was sparked in you to see where it goes from here. And so what I feel is as if you're kind of on the journey with me, Gabe, from the way you spoke. But I think that's amazing that you're able to evaluate and be alongside the speaker whilst you're evaluating. So it's just your manner, perhaps, I don't know, or the sincerity, but that's really nice. And I feel supported, even or at the same time as when you're saying things that I can learn from. Yeah, if that makes sense.
That was awesome. Yes, it did. Anyone else?
You know,
I
Kim,
missed
this is
part
Linda
of
again.
the speech, part of the evaluation, because I was knocked out briefly by Zoom, so I was struggling to log back in. But what I had, if I may say, it was on the positive side, which is very nice for the speaker.
Mhm. Exactly. And Linda, you had a comment?
Yeah, Gabe, I really appreciated all of the emphasis and all of the yourself, what you heard, what you felt, what you saw came right out of your mouth. And that was really perfect, because sometimes, as Kim was saying, we don't hear exactly, we hear a lot of platitudes up there and a lot of superficial talk. And I really think that you really gave it your honest opinion and really did a great job on your evaluation. So congratulations as a co-evaluator in this workshop.
Thank you. Michelle, did you have a comment?
Yeah. Oh, you could tell. I'm like, oh, teacher. One thing that I like, how my first Toastmaster mentor used to drive me nuts, but now that I'm doing more evaluations, I appreciate it. Other people may have mentioned this, but I liked how he did the mirror method. Said, you did this, your speech pattern was more teacher-like. Did you mean to do this? I just wanted to tell you this is how you came off. Other people mentioned that, but I just wanted to say how I like that, because that's mirroring and not insulting, but pointing it out and saying, did you intend this? And that makes the speaker think, oh, did I intend that? No, I didn't. Or yes, I did. That's my feedback.
Thank you. Anyone else? Gabe, I will say I loved how you used the I felt, I saw, I heard kind of method of evaluation. I think it's really effective. It's really effective for the speaker, especially when you referenced empathizing with her journey because you were on the same journey. I will say, when you said in that first 30 seconds, I thought you were going to go somewhere just a little bit differently, because I noticed in the first 30 seconds that Catherine was kind of giving us the background. I wished she had left into it and then come to the background, just to get us just a little bit more engaged. And you know, it's interesting that sometimes as an evaluator, when I'm listening from an evaluator perspective, I get lost in the speech and forget to write things down. And so what I'm doing is I was looking at Catherine's pages before she pulled them up and thinking that was really brilliant. And you did a great job of referencing how she pulled up and used the visuals to help take us on that journey. And I liked also the message that you got, is that it doesn't have to be this big, ugly, horrible thing. And you focused on what she was using it for. I thought you did a great job of giving a recommendation. And you don't have to apologize for it. It is what it is. It's the role of the evaluator. You know, don't apologize for it. The same way with when we're speakers. Most of you know Larry Wilson, right? There was a speech I gave at my home club I was a fairly new Toastmaster. And if you ask Larry, Larry will tell you he remembers the speech. And I had given the speech before. It was about a friend's daughter who had passed away. And I could usually keep from getting myself crying. I'd given it enough time. But I realized that some of the people in that room that day may have known my friend. And it made me really emotional. And um, I did get very emotional. I did start crying. And the best thing that happened to me that day was the evaluator told me that was okay. And giving you permission to feel or how you're doing, because that's what speaking's all about, right? And that's the importance of the evaluation. I think we saw it this evening. We all get something a little bit different out of a speech, and I love it when an evaluator tells you what they got out of the speech, because I think for the speaker, that's probably the most important thing, is get the message come across. And so if the message that Wilson was giving was not about courage, he now knows that's what Linda got from that speech. And so great job, you guys, all of you. I think you did a wonderful job. And I did want to add the importance of an introduction into a speech. When I talked about it a little bit and I kind of talked around it, but that introduction is key. It opens the speech for the people who are listening to it, and it is perfectly wonderful to evaluate that introduction kind of as part of the speech. And Linda did a great job with that example, and I appreciate it. And it's the one thing I struggle with, which with contest speeches, is you don't get that introduction. And so I dare you all to go out and look at a speech that was given. It was given in DC at the International Speech Contest by Aaron Beverly, and his speech title, I kid you not, was 68 words or something like that. It was an unreasonably long speech title. And at that speech level, the master of ceremonies, the contest master, reads off the name of the speaker, Aaron Beverly, this really long 68-word introduction, repeated the 68-word introduction, and then Aaron Beverly. For those of us who were watching live streaming, it was really confusing, because we're like, is Balraj lost? And come to find out, the people in the audience can see the speech title on screens. And we were a little bit confused, but it was a great use of being able to get an introduction in when you're really not supposed to. So, your speech introduction can be what you want. And if you wanted to help dive in and help reinforce that message, do it. It's really important. Speech introductions are really important. I'd like to say thank you for having me. I hope that all of you consider doing a lot more evaluations. It's my favorite part of Toastmasters, because I'm a frustrated speech judge, and I can very rarely give verbal feedback. So it's my way of doing it. But be honest, follow your core values, give the speaker something of value as a takeaway from that evaluation, and for the audience as a takeaway from the evaluation. I think we all got something out of both of our evaluators, because they were two very different styles, and you have to be giving your evaluation from the genuine you. That's the other aspect of evaluations. Be yourself, be who you are. Great job. Madam President, Vice President Education, I'm not sure who I'm
Toastmaster.
Control to.
Sure.
Yeah.
Let's give Kim Myers a warm, huge round of applause. Woohoo, woohoo. Thank you for this
Thanks,
wonderful.
you guys did the work.
Yeah, but you corralled the chickens in the pen. That's not easy with us. But thank you very much. Thank you for everyone for coming, and evaluators for allowing yourself to be evaluated. That's hard to do.